Dear friends, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. As we all know, on Sunday it has been 25 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall. This was without any doubt one of the most important events of our time. Almost from one night to the other, dictatorship and suppression was replaced by freedom. And soon the whole Soviet empire collapsed. It was incredible. Immense. I was 35 at that time, and not in my wildest dreams had I thought a few years before that something like this would happen. I had grown up with the Iron Curtain. It was impossible, and yet it happened. Some things are impossible, and yet they happen. The wall fell after a process where people yearned for freedom, and this yearn and their determination was helped by the new winds from the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev had taken over in 1985 and brought about a cautious change. They called it the perestroika, with a limited but very new openness, the glasnost, we called it. The Berlin Wall was obviously a wall of unfreedom. And there are many such walls of unfreedom still today, as we have heard a few speakers say already here. The highest walls, and those which suppress freedom the most, are built by different materials than iron, rock, and concrete. They are built by violence, harassment, inhuman treatment, lack of human rights, unpredictable, cruel power. Let me just give you 3 examples of many. In North Korea, ordinary people are kept within borders of unfreedom and extreme lack of knowledge. In Iraq and Syria, the IS, the Islamic State, is trying to build fundamentalistic walls between religions and between human beings. Behind that wall, you had better abide by their religion or die. In Nigeria, about 200 girls and young women are being kept in prison by Boko Haram, and they are being used. They are used by men who think that this is what women are for. They have been there now for many months. There have been massive protests from all over, but they are still kept as prisoners. Why is this? Why do we let this happen? And why did, for example, Rwanda happen with 1 million deaths? And why did Srebrenica happen? Also there, it was a question of walls between groups of people, ethnic groups. One can hope, of course, that political processes will tear down also these walls, as it did with the Berlin Wall. But can it ever be justifiable to wait for that to happen while the cruelest acts take place? Can we keep looking while Kim Jong-un, the unpredictable leader of North Korea, will perhaps murder as many people as he pleases in order to feel safe that there will be no opposition against him in the country? And is it really justifiable to watch for only one day without doing all that we can while a terrorist organization cuts the throats of hundreds of people because they have a different view of God and religion and because they are in the way? Can we defend standing on the side while hundreds of women and girls are kept prisoners, humiliated by men with weapons and bizarre ideas? Not to speak about Rwanda and Srebrenica again, and other bloodbaths where the walls between groups and nations of people have grown sky high. Brutal killings day after day, night after night, and the world was watching. Must not the international community do something radical to be able to look itself in the mirror of future without terrible shame? Basically, I think there are three ways, I'm moving over to law now a little bit, three ways of getting to grips with the outrage and the mad violence and misuse of power. First, the use of weapons on an ad hoc basis, as lately against the IS by mainly America. Second, stubborn and consistent diplomacy, sometimes with the use of sanctions and threat of sanctions. And third, international agreements to intervene every time in the future when something totally unreasonable happens. Cultural diplomacy? Well, cultural diplomacy is a wonderful means for peace building, but not for dealing with acute, extreme happenings like the ones I talked about. Out of these three, the use of weapons on an ad hoc basis is better than nothing, but unreasonable, of course, as a long-term method. Diplomacy and sanctions is far better than nothing. But how do we bring the IS or Kim Jong-un to the table of negotiation? I believe in the third possibility, the possibilities of international law to do something about these problems. The states of the United Nations need an agreement to always protect people against the very worst, against genocide and massacres. There must be commitments by states. Those who violate the most essential laws should know that the international community can intervene without delay and that they will be brought to an international court. What is there today when it comes to laws in these areas? Well, there is, of course, the Charter of the United Nations, a very interesting instrument. And when there is a threat to peace or aggression between states, the Security Council is to take action, even if it's needed engaging armed forces as a resort. This is in Chapter 7, Articles 39 to 50 of the Charter of the United Nations. But this is concerning threats to peace and aggressions between states. In the examples I mentioned, this won't help. So this is not enough for North Korea, IS, Boko Haram, Rwanda, Srebrenica. The Charter does not speak about things like genocide, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. Here, however, there is something rather new in the international community and the international lawmaking. There is what we call a responsibility to protect, R2P, responsibility to protect. Very interesting. This responsibility, which is not an international law but has evolved as practice, involves three basic measures. The first is that a state has a responsibility to protect its population from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. That's the state's responsibilities. The second is that the international community has a responsibility to assist the state to fulfill its responsibility. And the third is that if the state manifestly fails to protect its citizens from those four above mass atrocities, and also peaceful measures have failed, then it's for the international community to intervene, and even a military intervention could be considered, but as a last resort. The authority to employ this last resort and intervene militarily rests solely with the United Nations Security Council. So there is this responsibility to protect. So why isn't everything okay then? Well, nothing did happen for very long in Iraq and Syria. And what happened was certainly not something which was instigated by the United Nations. And nothing will certainly happen in North Korea if something really bad happens there, inside the country. And the girls in Nigeria, the girls and the young women in Nigeria are still prisoners. Rwanda and Srebrenica, to take all these 5 examples again, happened. So what is missing? What is missing? If we look at all these 5 examples that I have mentioned, Rwanda, Srebrenica, the IS, terror, North Korea, and Boko Haram, it's obvious to me that we really need to develop something better. Responsibility to protect is much better than something we had before. But as long as these terrifying things keep happening, we need to start working. We need to get things happen faster and to overcome all the difficulties that are there today in the international community. It may not be easy. It certainly will not be easy. But we must start a process. The process in itself could be very good in bringing everyone to the table and in having a consistent long-term discussion about these very serious and important matters. Maybe this could be an arena for cultural diplomacy even. If there is a long, consistent discussion for years and years about how to deal with these matters, then cultural diplomacy could maybe play a role. Maybe even the ICD could have some initiative power in it. Well, this is really supposed to be about learning from the Berlin Wall experience. And what I have said is that about learning from the Berlin Wall experience, not a lot, but it is, in a way, a little bit the same. We can see that long-term positive results need to start with a political process with great determination. Is this about peace building then? Peace building, jumping on the IS and Boko Haram and North Korea if something terrible happens. Is that peace building? Yes, it is. For some peace building, you do need weapons. Unfortunately, but truly. But isn't this all ridiculous? Could this really be done? It never could be done, could it? It is impossible, isn't it? No, nothing is impossible if it is important enough. After all, the Berlin Wall did fall, didn't it?